The sound of running water at 2 a.m. should have been impossible. Michael froze at the top of the stairs, his heart hammering against his ribs. His wife had been gone for 8 months now, cancer had stolen her away on a bitter February morning, and he and his 6-year-old son Tommy had been learning to navigate the wreckage of their lives alone. The dishes always piled up. The laundry always waited. The house that once smelled of jasmine and vanilla now carried the stale scent of grief and microwave dinners. So who was washing dishes in his kitchen in the dead of night? His hand trembled as he gripped the banister, every instinct screaming at him to grab Tommy and call 911. But then he heard it, humming. A soft, gentle melody that seemed to wrap around the darkness like a blanket. He crept down the stairs, each step a small eternity, until he could peer around the corner into the kitchen. A woman stood at his sink, her back to him, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, working through the mountain of plates and cups that had accumulated over the past week. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun. She wore a simple floral dress and hummed as she scrubbed, completely absorbed in her task. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" Michael's voice came out sharper than he intended, raw with fear and confusion. The woman didn't startle. She simply turned, her face serene, and smiled at him with eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to frighten you. I'm Margaret. I live 3 doors down. The blue house with the white shutters." Michael knew the house but couldn't recall ever seeing this woman. His mind raced. "That doesn't explain why you're in my kitchen at 2 in the morning." Margaret dried her hands on a dish towel, his dish towel, and gestured to the table. "May I explain? I promise I'm not here to cause any trouble." Something in her voice, warm as honey and utterly unthreatening, made Michael nod. They sat at the kitchen table, and Margaret folded her hands in front of her. "I lost my husband 12 years ago," she began, her voice steady but soft. "For the first year, I barely survived. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. The house fell apart around me. I stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, stopped caring." She paused, her eyes distant with memory. "Then one night, my neighbor, a woman I'd only waved to in passing, let herself in through my unlocked back door and cleaned my entire kitchen while I slept. I woke up to sparkling counters and a note that said, 'You're not alone. You're going to make it.'" Michael felt his throat tighten. "I never forgot that kindness," Margaret continued. "When she died 5 years later, I made a promise to myself. I would look for people who needed that same grace, that same silent help. I've been watching your house, Michael. Not in a creepy way," she added quickly, catching his expression. "But I've seen the lights on at all hours. The trash overflowing. Your little boy wearing the same shirt 3 days in a row. I know that kind of drowning. I've been there. So you just break into people's houses?" Michael asked, though his voice had lost its edge. "I don't break in. I check for unlocked doors. And I only come when I know I can help without intruding on your space. Tonight was my 3rd visit. Last week I did 2 loads of laundry and folded everything. The week before that, I cleaned your bathrooms and changed the sheets." Michael stared at her, his mind reeling. He thought he'd been managing, barely keeping his head above water but managing nonetheless. He hadn't noticed the cleaned sheets, had assumed he'd done the laundry in one of his exhausted hazes and forgotten about it. "Why?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Because someone did it for me. And because you deserve kindness, even when you don't ask for it. Especially when you don't ask for it." A small voice interrupted them. "Daddy." Both adults turned to see Tommy standing in the doorway, clutching his worn teddy bear, his eyes still heavy with sleep. He looked at Margaret without fear, with something that looked almost like recognition. "Hey, buddy," Michael said, moving to his son. "It's okay. This is Miss Margaret. She's our neighbor." Tommy walked past his father and right up to Margaret, studying her face with the intense scrutiny only children possess. Then he said something that made Michael's blood run cold. "Daddy, she's still here." "What do you mean, Tommy?" Michael's voice was tight. "The nice lady who makes the house smell good and fixes my stuffed animals when they tear. She's still here." Tommy looked up at Margaret with complete trust. "You came back." Margaret's eyes glistened with tears. "You've seen me." Tommy nodded. "You sing the song Mommy used to sing. The one about the mockingbird." Michael felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. How had he not known? How had he been so wrapped up in his own grief that he hadn't noticed a stranger coming into their home, interacting with his son? But as he watched Tommy lean against Margaret's knee, as natural as anything, he realized something. Tommy looked more peaceful than he had in months. The dark circles under his eyes seemed lighter. He'd even smiled at breakfast yesterday, the first real smile since the funeral. "You've been taking care of us," Michael said, his voice breaking. "This whole time, you've been keeping us from falling apart." "Oh, honey, no," Margaret said gently. "You've been keeping each other from falling apart. I just did the dishes and washed some clothes. The real work, the surviving, the loving, the moving forward, that's all been you two." Michael sank into a chair, his face in his hands. The weight of 8 months of grief, of trying to be mother and father both, of pretending he was okay when he was crumbling, it all came pouring out. He sobbed, deep wrenching cries that he'd been holding back for fear of scaring Tommy, for fear of admitting he couldn't do this alone. He felt small arms wrap around his neck. Tommy's voice whispered in his ear, "It's okay to be sad, Daddy. Miss Margaret told me. She said Mommy would want us to cry when we need to." Through his tears, Michael looked at this woman who had asked for nothing, who had given everything, who had seen their pain and responded with the most practical form of love imaginable. Cleaned dishes, folded laundry, repaired toys. The mundane acts that kept a household running when grief made everything feel impossible. "I don't know how to thank you," he managed to say. Margaret stood, smoothing her dress. "You just did. And someday, when you're ready, you'll see someone else drowning, and you'll know exactly what to do." She kissed the top of Tommy's head and moved toward the back door. "I left a casserole in your fridge. It'll be good for dinner tomorrow. And Michael, leave your back door unlocked on Tuesdays. That's when I do my rounds." As she disappeared into the night, Michael pulled Tommy onto his lap. They sat in the clean kitchen, surrounded by evidence of kindness they hadn't earned but desperately needed, and for the first time since his wife died, Michael felt something shift inside him. Not healing, not yet. But hope. The smallest seed of it, planted by a stranger who understood that sometimes love means washing someone else's dishes while they sleep. "I like Miss Margaret," Tommy said drowsily. "Me too, buddy," Michael whispered. "Me too." And somewhere in the darkness, an angel in a floral dress walked home, already thinking about which neighbor needed help next, carrying forward the chain of grace that had saved her life so someone else could save hers. Because that's what humanity looks like when it's at its best. Not grand gestures or applause, but quiet acts of service in the middle of the night, one dish at a time.